What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of Forward to Extraordinary, a part of the Strictly from Nowhere podcast experiment. I'm your host, Justin Abrams, a serial entrepreneur in pursuit of wisdom with the goal of sharing it with all of you. And today is no different. You know, I was really inspired. I've talked about this a couple of times over the last few months, but several months ago, I was actually participating in kind of an inaugural technology and innovation summit here on Long Island, where I'm from. I put so much energy into trying to build the technology brand that is Long Island. And so I was so inspired by what was happening. Accelerate Long Island, my good friend Dan Lloyd was helping to participate in building what feels like the first of maybe an annual technology celebration of the innovation, of the businesses, of the institutions, of the hospital systems, of the university systems that are right here at home on Long Island. And I felt just so part of the kindred spirit, the collective goal of raising the awareness of Silicon Island. And one of the individuals that were sitting on the panels is joining me today, Dr. Jerry Balentine. Dr. Balentine is the sitting president right now of New York Institute of Technology. NYIT is one of the university systems that sit here on Long Island. Absolutely no slouch of a university in its contributions in the technology and innovation conversation, but it's also a dynamite university for other sectors. I'll let Mr. Balentine control the narrative of what the institution is working on for today. But I really wanted to have this conversation with you today, Jerry, because I really want to talk about your perspective. I want to talk about what you see from an institution turning over. Like, the education systems are now catching on to the conversation of AI. AI has reinvigorated what regular people think are capable as far as the internet is concerned and what our computers can do for us. And I'm sure that from your perspective, it is changing the narrative of the culture of the conversation around technology. So, Dr. Balentine, welcome to this episode of Forward to Extraordinary. I can't wait to unpack your zero to market story.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. And yes, I remember that panel well, and I hope it's going to be an annual event. Because it was a great way of getting people together and just kind of sharing ideas. So on the panel with two other presidents to hear their point of view and then the questions. Absolutely. And New York Institute of Technology has been part of Long Island for a long time. And because we're a technical university, we are kind of providing that workforce that everybody needs, right? So we have a very large engineering school, providing obviously engineers, computer scientists. We have a large medical school feeding into the healthcare system that you're talking about, nurses as well. And then really the school that actually provides probably half the architects in all New York State is New York Tech. So our Long Island campus is a great campus. We also have a campus in New York City, right at Columbus Circle. And then what most people don't know, we also have a campus in Arkansas. So we have a healthcare campus in Jonesboro, Arkansas, about an hour from Memphis. So yeah, it's a great school. I've been there for about 10 years now, and it's just been exciting. I started as the dean of the medical school and took other jobs. And now I've been in higher education for about 10 years. Before that, I was in healthcare. I ran a hospital system, and I was a physician early on. And I think what I'm seeing, what is happening is that on one hand, everybody's talking about AI being a disruptor. I see it as an opportunity, right? I see it. No, now we can suddenly really do more things in a way in smaller spaces, right? Startups no longer need these massive factories to build something. Well, they need data centers, they need other things, but that doesn't require a massive amount of infrastructure in many cases. And I think that's a great opportunity for Long Island.
Well, as it relates to this long-term culture of innovation, like, you know the history much better than I do. Like, I am just now, as a young adult in business, having left a career behind where I never even really thought about this. Right, like 6 years ago, when I left my career behind and I started my own business here on Long Island, I never even thought about it. It was never even on my radar. You know the history better than I do, but for me, the conversation that we're trying to reinvigorate is cultural and synonymous with here on Long Island. We have incredible accomplishments that we're all worthy of. But when you talk about innovation, I think there are levels to that game. the conversation of innovation happening in Main Street businesses is not that far different as far as its faculty is concerned at the innovation at high level institutions or at the enterprise organizations that really command the business centers of Long Island. And so I really wanted to help define what does innovation look like, because the average individual that's watching this show is thinking about, how do I innovate in my business? How do I innovate in my dreams? And how do I think about reshaping the conversation of innovation so it doesn't feel like a barrier to entry? It more is a battle cry to progress.
No, I think that's a great way of putting it. I always, when we talk about AI now, I always talk about this as affecting everyone. And if you are sitting somewhere saying, oh, I can't use it, I don't need it, then you're going to be left behind, right? So what we're doing, just to talk about the school for a second, we're using a dual approach. So on one hand, we obviously have computer scientists, researchers, and we have a master's degree in artificial intelligence, just like cybersecurity and others. So that's for the experts, right? For people like you, maybe, who are just at a different level than even I am. But we also offer a minor in artificial intelligence that's open to any student. So you can be a nursing student, accounting student, architect student. You can get that minor. And the thinking behind that is we're preparing you for the job. Because when you graduate from New York Tech and you go on a job interview, no matter what job it is, they will always ask you, do you know about AI? And if you can say, yeah, I have a minor in AI, you move ahead. And I think higher education needs to just remember that at the core, no matter what other people might be thinking or arguing with me, it's about taking someone, making their dreams come true by getting them a job, graduate school, whatever career they dream about. Now, when I talk to people about AI, I always use the example of a plumber, right? So plumbers are probably the most difficult profession to find right now. If you need a plumber, you're on the phone begging and asking. So many of them are smaller businesses. They might have 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 employees. And I'm sure if I would ask most of them, to use AI, they go, no, I don't need it. It doesn't do anything for me. I put pipes together. On the other hand, imagine if your artificial intelligence program looks at your schedule for the day, tells you what to put in your truck, predicting what you will need in your truck at what appointment, and then moves the appointments around to make sure that the quick ones get done early, the other ones fit in. Suddenly you become much more efficient. Your customers are happier, you are happier, and your business grows. A business that has nothing to do with technology at all, that really goes to people's houses, goes to job sites to do their job. So I think I'm always trying to stress, let's not just think of the startup, the tech sector. Let's think of everybody else, how it affects them.
There's also this really cool conversation that's happening right now, which is built with AI versus my business uses AI in your example. Like a plumber may not be using like an AI route generator. What supplies do I need? What's the most efficient route? Like they may not need that level of intelligence. Old pen and paper may still work for them. Built with AI means I'm tired of using pen and paper and I would like to build a proprietary custom tool for my small business because I know that my folks, my people on my team are on the route all day on their devices anyway. I want to limit the amount of paper. I want to streamline the surface area of interruption to business or, coffee spilled on this thing or whatever. It built with AI is really what's happening exceptionally right now on Main Street as businesses are thinking about transforming. The barrier to entry to creating, this is why I want to have the conversation of innovation. What does that mean? There are levels to that game. Innovating in a small Main Street labor business, like being a plumber, could just mean the way I've been doing it for 35 years is starting to feel antiquated. My customers don't enjoy that experience. The new apprentices, my new staff don't want that experience. They want a digital footprint experience. And so the barrier to entry right now is it's never cheaper. It's never been faster and it's never been more in your likeness. And so I'm starting to see lots of these Main Street level conversations, which are just like, what's the minimum thing that I can do in my business built with AI, knowing that I can accelerate with speed without lacking in quality and performance. Whereas maybe 3-5 years ago, it was prohibitive. cost prohibitive. I couldn't get a digestion of your business processes. I couldn't build with any type of intelligence other than human intelligence, which a couple of years ago was the most expensive asset that we all had. And so now I'm just seeing this barrier just completely collapse. And I'm sure you're seeing it in incredible ways too, especially with the student population.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think your example is great because, years ago you'd have to buy a software program to do the route planning. Now you need a server to put it on in the cloud. And next thing you're investing, for a small business, $100,000 and 20,000 maintenance costs. And you're saying, well, paper is fine, coffee spilling on it, I'll buy you a new notepad, right?
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And I think the thing we are seeing on our, let's say in our industry, and higher ed doesn't like to be defined as an industry. We pretend we are purer, but in the end we are, right? Is so how do we use it on the operations end? Because, just like you, I get a million emails a day saying AI driven, AI this, AI that. So how do we use it? And on the operations end for an institution like ours, I look at the return on investment, right? The return on investment could be I now can do it faster or cheaper, or I can get more revenue through it. But it also is partially just moving us forward as a technology university. And you mentioned students. I meet with our students on an ongoing basis. I see them in Manhattan, in the elevators, in Long Island, walking around on campus. And it's always amazing. The students are always far ahead of their professors and of the president of the university. Now, I understand higher education better than they, but I don't really understand where they are. So it's now probably 2.5 years ago, I met with our honor students. They can be on any school. They're just the really outstanding students. I meet with them just to chat. And 2.5 years ago, I sat down with them and said, I assume all of you are using AI models, AI, LLMs. And they all go, yeah, we do. And I said, well, just tell me what you use them for, because the average adult uses AI as basically a Google search, right? They're just typing something in and that's it. And they talked about, the engineering students talked about finding supplies and parts that are very difficult to find and getting the best price. But two students, and this is 2.5 years ago, so it's old news today, but back then it was not, said, well, I use it as a companion. I said, what do you mean as a companion? He said, well, I come home and say, hey, whatever they're using, what should I do today? Or, I'd like to play basketball. Where's the close court? And that was the first time I ever heard the concept of, having kind of an artificial intelligence companion. By now, obviously, that's mainstream, right? We see it everywhere, everybody's doing it. We're trying it on the elderly to have somebody in their home and so forth. So I think what's so cool about being in higher education, you're talking to the other side, your students, and they know more than me. And I think that's happening rapidly because of AI. It happened a little bit with the internet, and I'm old enough to remember the internet coming about, but it was still, you needed a big computer and you needed to figure out how to do it. But now, because everybody has their phones and has the app on their phone, they can do it. It's just really amazing learning from the students on where that is going. The reason I was at Accelerate the event was actually because we started a startup a startup division at New York Tech. Because when I became president, I looked around and I realized we had 39 startups on campus. Student startups that had hardly any support. We gave them some office space, a couple of professors worked with them. So we actually just dedicated a building just for students to be in. They can use it as office space. They can have mentoring program there. So people like yourself would be sitting there telling them, no, this is how you do it. School of Management students might be there saying, hey, I can help you with a business plan. And computer science students might be there while I can help you program. So we started that just because it's coming from the students. They're just so interested. And to your point, they see the future different. Right? Very few students really in the past started and said, oh, I want to start a business. Many of them might have said 10 years from now, I want to start a business. But now there are a lot of them who are saying, no, I want to do my thing.
What I find the sentiment of all of this is, and you didn't say it, so I'm just going to say it on its nose. We have some incredible talent. We breed talent here. I mean, we have some of the best high school and middle school, primary school education systems on the planet are right here on our little 120-mile island. And the retention of talent has historically been a problem. I have watched from like my high school generation. We have some incredibly successful founders that have come out, and business operators, builders, thought leaders that have come out of my half Hollow Hill school district from 2006, my graduating class. Most of them, I would say like 95% of them, don't live here. They don't even live in Manhattan. They moved. They went to Chicago. They went down to Nashville. They went down to Miami. They're in San Francisco. Like, they're taking advantage of different things that happen either at the state level as incentives, maybe it's for tax avoidance or like whatever the scenario might be, to innovation incubation that happens in San Francisco and everything outside of that. In the last couple of years, Manhattan has really turned into an epicenter of innovation, acceleration, incubation, investment and venture funding. Like, there's a real move home, especially in fintech and medtech here at home. But it still is incredible to me that the amount of talent that comes through the university system, the next generation, that doesn't have infrastructure yet here on Long Island to maintain that quality of individual. And so they have to go elsewhere. They have to find business partners and programs and, the Y Combinators of the world elsewhere and go across the country, and their talent is leaving where it was born and bred. And so it sounds like to me that the university systems, especially NYIT, are doing their part in trying to incentivize businesses and founders and talent to stay home.
Yeah, definitely. And let me start off from my accent, you can tell I'm not a native Long Island.
Well, we were going to get to the back.
And more importantly, I've never lived on Long Island. So I'm not brainwashed into, the Hamptons, the South Shore, the North Shore, whatever. I really have just worked here and really realized what an incredible space it is, what an incredible place it is. And you heard me probably say this before, we need to get away from the notion that we're a suburb of New York City. We're so much more and so much different, right? I mean, how many places have, beaches on both sides of their place? How many places have vineyards on one end, and then they can go to the other direction and actually go into one of the largest urban areas in the world? So how many places can you go and sail your boat, but at the same time also just sit at home and watch the sunset? I mean, it's just an incredible place that combines all of that. So we need to take that, emphasize that aspect to our students. Yes, the students, obviously, when they graduate, in the end, it's the job, right? So you need to have the jobs and the opportunities for them to stay. And the places you mentioned, it's the natural places, right? Still today, if you say to someone, you want to go into tech, what are they saying? They're saying San Francisco, Silicon Valley, right? You want to go into music and Nashville and other places. So I think we need to not even reestablish it. We have it. We need to reemphasize it, rebrand it, and just mention it to everyone who's here that these are the opportunities. And I think startup centers, whether it's at our university or others, are a crucial part of that. We see it gives you an easy access, right? So I've been a student at this university for 4 years. I've gotten to know the facilities, and now they're offering me an office space for free or deeply discounted. Now they're offering me basically an accountant, because I can use one of the management students for that. Now I can really get going with minimum to no investment. And I think you do some hackathons, we do pitch sessions, and we actually have a $5 million fund that our students can access, whether it's $5,000, $15,000 or $25,000 to start and kind of let their ideas grow. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's crucial that we let people know who we are on Long Island, the resources we have, and then kind of do the opposite, right? Many of our students come from all over the country to come to us. We now need to just sell them on where we are and say, hey, you're here already, why not stay?
I think it's also just a little bit of the extra sentiment, which was, you were raised here, you went to school here, there are amazing universities here, don't discount right at home. A lot of people want to get away and like want to go experience university, and like that's great. That's a cultural and personal decision for sure. But as far as the education that you can achieve and the opportunities that come out of that, right at home is doing an incredible job. I'm alumni of SUNY Old Westbury, and none of this existed when I graduated. I think I graduated in 2012. So my diploma sets. None of this existed in 2012 as far as my program was concerned. And I wasn't really in technology back then. I didn't really have any of that, but like just being part of the culture that existed on campus back then it wasn't even a thing. It wasn't even a thing that was available. And so the progress that has really happened in the system to incentivize young people to really think about where they're getting their education from, because it's really not those 4 years. That was a lot of fun and that was really impactful to me. But it's like, what is happening in my post-education, post-baccalaureate, maybe postgraduate experience that is supporting me as an innovator? And so the alumni program, I would assume, is super valuable. And like, that's a participating and feeding pool of the next generation of innovation. So lots of reasons to stay at home. No cost for the advertising. But what I would love to get into is a little bit of the backstory, because your journey is also incredible as well. And so I'd love to know about young Jerry, all the way up to the president of NYIT, Dr. Balentine, and things that you have accomplished along the way. Because this is not only just about building businesses. This is not only just about innovating. This is also becoming what you're actually masterfully talented at. It's a big portion of Forward to Extraordinary is like, pursue your version of what absolute mastery looks like. Be passionate about the opportunities that come our way. Don't necessarily pursue passions. It's like one of just the things I talk about. And so I'd really love to know a little bit about you, just your human experience, what's made you unique and some of the challenges along the way, and how we got to where we're at today.
Well, let me start off with young Jerry. Young Jerry was actually born in Germany. My dad was U.S. military and my mom is German. And when he was done with the military, he became a contractor with the military, and you have to move off base. So I grew up in a German city, German mom, American dad who worked with the military, and then came to the U.S. for college, because my dad always said, when you're done with high school in Germany, you're going to the U.S. for college. And then I had, like you, a great experience and left that area, went to medical school, and then came to New York, actually, because one of the best places to train in my specialty, which is emergency medicine, is the South Bronx. And there's a hospital there that was quite famous, and I came there to train. And then really my healthcare career started. I was recruited to join a hospital and help them train young doctors. I did that for a while. And then a pivotal moment happened for me when I was asked to open up an urgent care center on Rikers Island. So and the story I always tell is I had two bosses, and they were approached saying, "Hey, you guys, you got to help us start an urgent care center on Rikers Island." And they both said, "No way, we'll never go to Rikers Island," understandably so. And young Jerry, and a little bit older at that point, said, "Sure, I'll go." So I went to Rikers Island, started an urgent care center there for the hospital system, and then was asked to run one of the hospitals. And so that's how I got into healthcare, ran hospitals, health plans, malpractice funds. And about 10 years ago, I received a call from a friend of mine who says, "Look, I'm retiring and I think you'd be great at my job." And my answer was, "I have no idea what you do for a living." And so we had lunch. She explained to me what she did for a living, and I joined New York Tech. So none of my career moves were ever conscious. I want to be the only thing was I want to be a doctor, go medical school, be a doctor. Everything else, I was approached or somebody said, "Hey, this is cool. You want to try this?" And because I always felt I want to try everything. My specialty is one of constant change. So I clearly am somebody who likes it. So I always just took people up. And when the new president came in, he said, "Can you help me with this?" And I said, "Yes," and worked on it. And then when he retired, to my surprise, the university board asked me to be the next president. Again, never really planning it. I think the really fascinating thing for me about having been basically in three industries, right? A physician, healthcare, now higher ed, is that the problems are all the same. And that you need to just kind of realize that the problems are always the same, and you need to just find the right solutions, and you need to just be there for people. I'm a big believer in always saying yes. Now, always saying yes doesn't mean you come to me and say, "I want a raise," and I go, "Yes." It just means, "I'll consider it. Let's talk about it. Why would you need a raise?" So having those different backgrounds and realizing what they all have in common, I think really helps me deal with the day-to-day problems. Just like artificial intelligence as a disruptor. Yeah, I remember the internet, or I remember what happened when a hospital went to electronic medical record. Suddenly, nobody wanted electronic medical record. Oh, no, I can write on this piece of paper. It works much better for me. Nowadays, nobody would ever think to write on paper again. So my background is one of having done many different things, but realizing there's a theme through all of them. And then, because I've always been in not-for-profit, whether it's higher education or healthcare, it's also incredibly rewarding because at the end of the day, you help someone, right? So you help someone like you start a career and move forward, or in obviously very real in an emergency department, you help someone with a broken bone or heart attack. But even when you run health systems, you can always think of, so what's the positive outcome that I can do here about building a cancer center or more access? And I think that's just been always fascinating to me and incredibly enjoyable. And now I just love seeing our students, talking to them. Because, as I said before, they teach you an immense amount. You learn about them and their families and the good, the bad, the ugly, so to speak, their struggles. It's a fascinating job, and I really enjoy it. And obviously, we have great faculty, and I love talking to them. Most of them are much smarter than I am, and certainly in their fields. And it's just a great place to work, higher education. I've really enjoyed it.
You know, to me, it sounds like there's really kind of two themes that I talk about always. That first of all, it's very entrepreneurial to just be open to building. You don't necessarily have to own the business. You don't have to be the investor in the business to be entrepreneurial, self-starting, innovative, first principle, like however you want to think about it. You also very much fall right into the topic of follow opportunities, try to become passionate about the opportunities along the way. I wonder if you've ever been derailed. Like, did you ever pursue an opportunity, get a little bit ways into it and just say, this wasn't for me? And it really leads up to like, what is your relationship with failure and the feedback of that data that we obtain from failing along the way?
So I've certainly had many small projects that we tried that we failed. And I'm a big believer that, especially for your team and people working for you, that they can't succeed on every project. I think it's really important to realize if you've never failed on a project, that means you've never really done enough projects, right? You need to fail. And I think nowadays the big thing is fail fast, right? So,
Yeah.
hey, this is not working. Let's move on. And we certainly have done that. Trying to think of my professional life, I've just been very fortunate, always working with incredible teams. So um, I I think I might have at one point thought of doing something different, and then it didn't work out for me. But those were always like pre-even happening events. So when I was very fortunate. I was many years ago. I was recruited when the internet bubble burst. Right before the burst, I was approached about moving back to Europe. There was a medical publishing concept that came out, and they needed someone who spoke German, French, and English. And I speak German and English fluent. And, my English is semi-fluent, my German is very fluent, and I speak some French. And they offered me to move to Paris, which is one of my favorite cities, and it sounded very tempting. And then last minute, besides small kids, I said, you know what? I don't know. That's a big disruptor for me. And I said no. And I think 6 months later, the company didn't exist anymore because the internet bubble burst and, and they didn't have any money. So I think I've been lucky all along uh, in that sense. And that certainly was not my insight. There was a gut feeling. And I've just always been fortunate that wherever I stepped, there were really talented people. There was a lot of excitement that it just worked out for me. And so I think it's also a little bit less risky on my end, i.e., somebody hires me as a doctor, somebody hires me as running a hospital, somebody hires me as a president. That's a lower risk than, okay, Jerry, let's go out and start this new company idea you have, right? I mean, that's much higher risk. So I give much more credit to people who do that. I give much more credit to our students who, just kind of say, okay, you know what, this is my dream. So now I'm going to just sit here and work on that. I think that's a much higher risk, hopefully also high reward scenario, but it takes a lot of guts. And I think I really appreciate that when I see that in our students.
It's a beautiful conversation maybe that we could have, um, which is really like, where do you think that burning desire comes from for your students? Like for the young people that really want to pursue the hardship of building something, of entrepreneurship, like that is not the easy route. That is like actually the grueling one. That's a way to make a ton of mistakes super early on. I didn't build my first business until I was in my 30s already. Like I went to work first. I always knew I would be an entrepreneur. I got stories of like 7 generations of entrepreneurship on my mother's side. Like I always knew I would get there. But like I really didn't, in college, I really did not even have like the awareness of wanting to build anything. I just like wanted to survive that situation. I was happy to have even gotten a job in around the 2008 financial crisis. Like that's just my timeline. And I am finding the same thing as you. We do a lot of community activation. I do a lot of networking events here on Long Island for the young people. A lot of partnering with the tech communities at various universities, especially Farmingdale. And I'm hearing that sentiment. Kids are so passionate about not necessarily going to work, but building something with their name on it and really pursuing innovation, not necessarily considering the hardships of entrepreneurship. It's like they're almost like immune to that. It's like it doesn't matter. Where do you think like that empowerment has come from for this generation?
I think the interesting thing is I find it in all kinds of groups. So, it's easy for me to answer and say, wow, I see young people who had no opportunities in their family and they are not doing well. So that's where they could get it. But I find it everywhere. I find it in these students who come to this country from other countries and graduate from our school. I find it in students who come from prestigious high schools. I can find it from high schools that are less prestigious. I think there's just a drive in there that might just be generational. That might just be sitting there and looking around and saying, what did mom and dad do? And I love them and they did a great job. They raised me, but I'm not going to work at this place for 40 years. And now that has changed anyway. I mean, that's 2 generations ago, but there's something there. Now, I can't speak for other parts of the country, but I really see it a lot in the tri-state area. I really see it a lot here. It'd be interesting to see, is this somewhat unique to this area? Is it who we are, or is it all over the country? I assume it's all over the country.
I also assume that it's relatively systemic like that. What I actually see, and maybe this is like an interesting unlock in the conversation, what I actually have seen, especially in my professional career, I build businesses for other people. I run an agency. I boil it down. I make dreams come true for people. People bring their money, their ideas, their hardships to me. I try to make a business out of that and find their first revenue and get their first experiences. What I actually find is that most folks have ideas locked up in their brain, but have never had the tools, the opportunity, the freedom to innovate as we do today. Non-technical people have amazing ideas. Like I remember my grandfather had an invention every 5 seconds. He would turn around with another invention, whether it was like a light on a mailbox to say there's mail in there, pick it up instead of the flag, like silly stuff, a brake light on a bicycle, silly stuff. But hey, if you have an idea like that today, you spend 5 minutes in Claude will find you every patent, every design package, everything that you need to go to market and get approval for something like that. It's not only about building software today. It's about the ability to innovate. And that's how we really started our conversation. And what I'm finding, like literally speaking to young people, but also speaking to people that have spent a career, are in their 60s and 70s, and are like, holy smokes, I would like to do life over with this type of tooling, because all the questions that I left unanswered, all the what ifs, all the experiments, all the reasons why I would want to fail fast, but was afraid to fail because of the risk of my past, is now totally possible. And so I'm just finding that there's an invigoration of non-technical people that have no boundary anymore. They literally have no barrier to entry. It costs almost nothing, pennies on the dollar, to try and validate an idea. And that can be on anything. And now is really about pursuing the opportunity, because you can become passionate about whatever it is. It might be the raw material thing that you're passionate about, which is just making a living for your family. It might be creating something that's worth a legacy. It might be, I want a portfolio of things and don't just want to be doing one thing. So here's the 7 things that I feel like I'm good at. And of course, the generation of just being a content creative feels like it's kind of synonymous with doing business today anyway. And so everybody's super fascinated with what's possible with just general social media, creation of content, owning your thought leadership, not necessarily needing the validation of going into the job. And so I'm finding this is like a very interesting moment, and it does quite feel systemic. I mean, I'm talking to young people from all over the country. It's like part of the things that I'm passionate about is mentorship of the youth. And like, man, like that is the overwhelming sentiment is like, nobody told me I couldn't. But when I was going through school, there was one route. Like you had to go either full on into business, which is absolute doubt. There wasn't VC money flowing like wine back then. It was a different equation 15, 20 years ago when I was coming through the system. And it's amazing how fast time has traveled. But I'm sure that these types of conversations kind of drum up an idea. And I often refer to my guest before we kind of wrap this up. What else comes to mind? I'd hate to end the show and you say, hey, I wish we would have touched on that topic. And so what comes to mind, if anything at all, Dr. Balentine?
So first, I think to your point, you're absolutely right. The barrier is so much lower, right? I mean, if I wanted, let's say I had an idea for something, I would have had to go to the library to see, and then I would have to go around and say, well, I need $20,000. I can never, ever get that.
I was done at the library. Forget that.
I'm giving a presentation at the hospital system next week on the influx of private equity money into physicians. And before I got on this interview, I spent 20 minutes with Claude, figuring out the ownership of different institutions, all stuff that would have taken months for me to get together previously. And so you're right. So I think in this generation, I think it's the tools that are available. I think the one thing I want to talk about is what we really need to push on Long Island is the partnership between business and higher education, right? Because we provide the workforce that you want. So on one hand, I need to know from you what you really want, right? So what do you really need in the workforce? And not even just the majors, but what skill sets? What do you want? So I think what I want to talk about as this last point is how can we increase these partnerships? Because they help both, right? So if I make sure all my students get jobs on Long Island, at Long Island companies, then that helps me as an institution, it helps my students, and it helps the partnership. So that's why I go to many events speaking, and in general, everybody's open to it. I think we still need to look at a couple better vehicles on how to do it. Because if every time it's Jerry talking to Jimmy or Jerry talking to Jane, that takes a lot of time. But what vehicle do we have? And there are certain organizations that do it, that we can really make sure business and higher ed gets together. We learn from them, they learn from us, and we together grow Long Island.
Something that I see and get feedback from, I do a lot of business level networking forget the student population for a while. Like my world is ran on relationships and referral programs. So I got to meet the next person could change my life. I find the universities have it's a one directional support system. So feeding the next generation of candidacy is a great mission. The part that is missing, just from hearing from other businesses, is there isn't necessarily an incentive for a business to even care or know that the university system exists for several reasons. The businesses are, let's talk small to mid-market businesses. We have a huge saturation of mid-market and small enterprise businesses that are here. We don't have very many large enterprise public companies that are here on Long Island, but the mid-market enterprise, small enterprise, there's a saturation of that, especially in manufacturing, especially in the innovation sector. I mean, you don't have to go very far to see that. Unless there is like a strategic allegiance between a university system and that organization, Main Street, small businesses that are doing between 5 and 50 million a year, they're pulling candidates that are the least risky. That's usually coming from a vetted recruiter. That's typically coming from somebody who has had job experience. It's not necessarily going unless I have like a classic internship program or a junior hiring strategy. What I find really interesting right now is like the quality of individual coming out of the university program is higher with more tooling and is advanced in their abilities in comparison to what the job market prepared us for 15 years ago. What I would love to see is some type of symbiosis between businesses. What do universities do for businesses? It's clear that universities do a lot for students. It's clear that businesses do a lot for students. But what I don't really see is this relationship between businesses and higher education. And so I could be wrong. I might just not have been doing business for long enough here, but like, where would be the incentive for me to participate like beautifully without any obligation at the higher education experience?
No, and I think especially those businesses are the key, right? So Coca-Cola has people hire all over the world, all over the country. They have their processes. But if I have one of those smaller businesses, I can't afford that. And I think here we come back to artificial intelligence. Because what I can do, I can educate your employees, existing employees. I can educate your senior leadership team on artificial intelligence. We started a certificate program, which is only going towards our alumni. So we're providing free certificates in artificial intelligence to our alumni. And I think I'd be happy to transform that into a program for businesses, right? So you're my business partner. Here, I'll educate your middle management about, what does Claude do, or why would it help me? What could I do? And then, you say, you know what, I'm going to take 2 of your students for internships next summer. So there is an exchange, there's a relationship for both sides, but I think that's one way we can do it. And we can also do it with traditional stuff, right? So you have a whole bunch of employees who've been advancing, but they don't really know business well. We can offer MBA to you. How can we do it? We can do it for free because you, in turn, take 4 of our students for internships. So both sides invest very little, but get a lot out of it. But I think especially education in artificial intelligence, because many people just don't really use it, as we talked before, to their full potential. And the potential is only growing. Most people I talk to, when they say, do you use ChatGPT? Oh, yeah. What do you do? Well, I ask them, where's a good Italian restaurant? I go, yeah. So, you're just kind of Yelp on steroids, kind of, right? So, so I think there's a lot to be learned. As I said, I'm speaking next week in front of a physician group, and a big part of my speech is just what I do. What do I use it for? Right? Just to say, forget about this artificial intelligence thing up here that is this massive thing. No. It made my slide for today's presentation. Right? So instead of 2 hours, it took me 5 minutes. It's my intern. It's my researcher. It's all the other things I use it for. So I think sitting around the table with businesses and ask them, so what do you need? Because higher ed, one of our faults is that we think we know everything, because we are surrounded by really smart people. But I don't know your industry. I don't know what you need, because you might need something totally different than what I think you need, right? So I'm saying, you should get an MBA. Well, it might be worthless to you, because what you really need is a better way of moving your trucks around, a better way of, your technology to work, a better way of whatever it might be.
I have a laundry list of applicable ways that businesses can use this type of tooling. I really think it's just about becoming adaptable to the modern digital toolkit. I think we've all had to do this in ways over the years. I'm not too young to remember life without all of this stuff available within the workforce. I grew up with tech explosion, which is kind of how it's gone. And so this is just like the new expected minimum toolkit. I remember when I was getting my first jobs coming out of college, I would write like proficient in Microsoft Word. Like that mattered. And it might have back then. But today, to be proficient in the modern tooling, I'm proficient in Claude. I'm proficient in all agentic systems. I'm proficient at the harness level. I'm proficient in agentic coding, or I'm a specialist of design, agentic design. Like cool. That's just like the next minimum expectation, where the repetitions come and the high value comes. And the hard part of young people trying to find high value jobs right now is time under tension and repetitions of projects. Like, how many things could you have possibly built in just a couple of years? Let's call it from like halfway through high school to the time that you've completed your graduate degree. Like maybe that's an 8-year period of time. How many? So I often encourage young people to build as many different things as you possibly can, because I didn't get skillful in my pursuit of mastery by staying stagnant. I have built many things, hundreds of things, my things, their things, families' things, whoever it might be. So I always think about like the thing that separates young people from being able to get a very valuable job and hold the conversation and not get marginalized because of their age is repetitions and portfolio. And so I think the sentiment is really all there. Like, what is possible with modern tooling right now? And I think the adoption of that is just starting to come. We're all doing our part in trying to educate business, educate family, educate, students at the youth level for sure. Dr. Balentine, I've enjoyed our conversation tremendously for today. I've learned a lot. I was so inspired by you and the rest of the panel. For anybody that's watching, the panel won't name drop. We'll only talk about NYIT here, but the panel included Dr. Balentine's peers at all of the premium universities that are here on Long Island. Just do a little research of what the heck I'm talking about. You will find that we're talking about a crazy culture, an incredible history of innovation and education here on the island that I grew up on. And so, Dr. Balentine, I appreciate you so much for joining the show. It's not every day that I get someone esteemed from my community that wants to participate in the conversation. I'll do my very best to share your story, but I wish you and everything you touch forward to extraordinary.
Great. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun. I really love your enthusiasm, and hopefully we can work together on many other projects.
I look forward to that very much, though. You take care.
Take care.